Hi, welcome back to GCon 360. My name is Dylan Press, and I'm the guru. You guys have probably seen a few of my newsletters with some Google Apps tips. So our next presentation is on the provisioning and deprovisioning process. And it's a really important process because it is how users come onto and leave your domain, which can be messed up in various ways and can be, when done right, can be a very beautiful thing. But before we get into that presentation, I just want to say a few things about the giveaway. So this is a really cool presentation because we are giving away a Chromebook Pixel to one of the lucky attendees. So if you're interested in winning that, which I imagine most of you are, there is a virtual event bag that you should sign up for. You can find this by going up to the top of your Google. Actually, let's wait for a few viewers to come in. Let's just see. Looks like let's just wait for a couple more viewers to get in before I start things. All right, so now that we have a few more people in here, so the virtual event bag, how you can find this, and if you're interested in the Chromebook, winning the Chromebook Pixel, I suggest you do try and find this. You go up to the top of your Hangouts on Air, and you'll see a little 3x3 grid. And if you click on that, there should be two applications there. One is the Q&A app, where you guys can all ask questions, and Will will be answering your questions at the end of the session. So any questions you have on his presentation on the provisioning and deprovisioning process. And also there is the Showcase application, where it will show on the side some content, one of which is the virtual event bag, where you can click into that, sign up, and then at the end of this session, you can, I'll be posting a form there which you can fill out, and then you'll be eligible to win the Chromebook Pixel, as well as a bunch of other cool swag that we're giving away, such as these t-shirts. I'm not sure if you can see those. So we'll be taking your questions at the end of the session, and I hope you enjoy everything Will has to teach you. And without further ado, I'll turn it over to Will.
Thank you, Dylan, and hi, everyone. As Dylan said, my name is Will O'Leary. I'm a product expert here at BetterCloud, been with the team for about a year. I'm also a certified Google Apps administrator, and as Dylan mentioned, today I'm going to be taking you through some best practices for how you can really foolproof your provisioning and deprovisioning processes. I've got a brief deck to go through, just some major concepts, and then we'll actually be going through a quick demo of our app, which is, of course, called BetterCloud. So I'm going to share my screen at this time. And of course, our topic for today, building foolproof provisioning and deprovisioning processes. So I think it's really important first to define the challenges that we're faced with when dealing with provisioning and deprovisioning users in a Google Apps environment. It's, of course, a multi-step process. And with a multi-step process provides a lot of opportunities to make mistakes, human error, easy slip-ups within the context of creating a user or a set of users, offboarding those users as well. And those consequences, or excuse me, there are consequences to those mistakes that really do live off the computer screen and in the real world. It can be very difficult first just to define what the onboarding process is. That's different for every organization that I've dealt with in my experience, what onboarding really means. For example, your organization may want an employee added to all the correct Google groups because that ensures that they'll be getting all the correct email distributions once that account is provisioned. That can be a difficult thing to do with the natively available tools. When deprovisioning a user or offboarding someone from your environment, transferring all of their owned assets can be very difficult. Many people that I've seen in my experience are fearful of deleting an account from their Google Apps environment entirely because once you delete an account, the documents that person owns, any shared calendars, for example, all of those items are lost once you delete the account. So it's very, very important to make sure that items are appropriately transferred in order to preserve business continuity and make sure that kind of the slack can be picked up by people who are remaining with the organization after the person you've deprovisioned has been deleted. And what we'll find, particularly in the case of provisioning, is that setting up detailed and accurate organizational unit structure within your Google Apps environment is very, very critical to this process. Org units kind of unlock a lot of the nuances related to Google Apps. So it's extremely important to make sure that you do use organizational units and that those are done accurately so that the permissions across all the different services within Google Apps are doled out appropriately. A key piece goes without saying for onboarding new users: password creation. You can, of course, assign a password on your own, or you can let Google generate a random password. By checking the box that requires a user to reset their password the first time they log in, you're ensuring they're picking something new, something safe. And you can require your users to change passwords on a regular schedule. Now, with Google, there's no kind of calendar or automated reminder for this, so you've kind of got to set a reminder for yourself in whatever method works for you in order to notify that user to change their password, or you can force a password reset through the admin console. The downside of that is that this has to be done. First of all, it is on you to remember to do that. And second of all, this has to be done one at a time. There's no way to do that in bulk. The other option is you can use BetterCloud to add your user to a scheduled password policy. And again, this is the first instance where organizational units will come into play by adding a user to an org unit where a BetterCloud password policy has been applied. They'll be covered under that password policy's net so that that user is required to change their password every 3 months or every 6 months, for example. Organizational units are, of course, the building block of that. For management of users within Google Apps, getting the organizational units set up appropriately is extremely important. It gives you the ability to turn on individual services. In my experience, I've seen cases where, say, if you're in the academic space, you may want Hangouts, you may want YouTube turned off for your students. That's something that can only be done when using organizational units. You may allow staff to use those services, but with a complex and detailed organizational unit structure, you'll be able to appropriately turn those on and off. So very, very important to do that. There are many cases where within the context of BetterCloud, policies or bulk permissions or actions can take place at the organizational unit level. We've already touched upon one piece, the password policies, and doing so with those organizational units is a critical way to kind of capture the nuances of your organization, deal with organizational units on a case-by-case basis. And I've seen organizations, schools, companies, government institutions set up their organizational units by office location. If they've got international offices, offices in different parts of a given country. Job function is another very popular one. Finance, sales, marketing, HR. Many popular organizational units that you'll see. And really this shouldn't be much of a surprise because those organizational units have completely different functions within the organization, require a different IT setup in each case. Google Apps skill level is another one. There may be, for example, the admin team that has a completely different setup from the average end user. So there are many ways you can go with this, and these are just some examples, but if nothing else from this presentation, I highly recommend, if your organization hasn't done this already, absolutely set up a detailed organizational unit structure that captures the way that your organization does business or the way that your school district or government institution operates on a day-to-day basis, and make sure that that's accurate and really reflecting your business activity. User profiles. Google allows for some detail population within the context of a user profile, but it's not really as complete as it could be. You can see things like name and email address, but with BetterCloud, you have the ability to fill out many, many additional fields, such as title, their manager, multiple phone numbers, work, mobile, their department, and many, many more if you need multiple email addresses. for example, if you need to populate aliases. These are all things that really you'll only want to do in the context of provisioning new users. So it's very, very important to establish that information up front. That's going to enable you to share that information across the organization. So if you have regional offices, for example, where your users in, say, Los Angeles need to interact with users in New York, and they don't have the contact information, well, you've kind of interrupted business continuity by preventing those users from getting the contact information of their colleagues that they need. With BetterCloud, you can have that information pushed to all of your users to appear in their Google directory. You can even push it to mobile devices and really build out that rich contact directory with all the appropriate information on all of your users so that they're getting the most up-to-date, complete information. Email signatures. This is one of the more heavily used capabilities within BetterCloud, and for many, many reasons. This is something that will really impress the marketing folks. A standardized email signature, it absolutely gives your organization a professional presence. It ensures consistent branding across all of your users, particularly as your organization grows. It can be very, very difficult to ensure that everyone's keeping that uniformity and using the branding that's desired for your organization. And conversely, when you're dealing with a smaller organization, an organization with, say, 10, maybe even fewer people, it's very important to make sure that people know who you are. Your business is up and coming, and you want to confirm that anyone who sees communications from your users knows who they're dealing with. They have a professional look and feel. So very, very important to get those email signatures right. With the natively available tools, the admin console really provides no way for an administrator to dole out email signatures, to ensure that their users are actually applying the signatures that they've chosen and keeping them consistent across different parts of the organization. Conversely, there's no way for an administrator to say that one group or one organizational unit needs a different signature from a different business unit. And that's something that BetterCloud allows for. A customizable signature, a signature policy that runs on a regular schedule. Generally speaking, we always advise for a daily run. That way you're actually enforcing that the signature remains consistent. And one that can be pushed out on a case-by-case basis, either across your domain, to an organizational unit, to a Google group, or to an individual user or users plural. So these are some of the core kind of ways that signatures get used. And you can kind of see as we're going through some of the processes within BetterCloud, how that actually comes into play. So at this time, I'm going to open up BetterCloud and we'll go through some of the capabilities together. The general flow will be, I'll show you how BetterCloud can provision a single user. We have a guided walkthrough for that. How BetterCloud can bulk provision users, and how BetterCloud offboards users. And along the way, we'll be talking about use cases for each one of those tools. I know that there are people from all kinds of organizations of all shapes and sizes on our call today. So if I don't give an example that applies to your organization, I apologize. But please understand there are many, many use cases for for the ways that our tools can be applied across, again, organizations of all shapes and sizes. So for those of you that have never seen it before, this is BetterCloud. It starts here with the Domain Health and Insight Center, which is just a landing screen for Google Apps that presents alerts about your environment. Those alerts are categorical: directory, Drive, Gmail, Google+, etc. They're prioritized by these different color-coded icons here to the left side, and they're also actionable. So you can click on the corresponding links to jump to the different parts of BetterCloud where you can resolve a particular alert. As far as our focus, we'll be here in the directory section today, primarily under the user functionality. And we'll begin with creation of users. As I mentioned, there's a guided walkthrough as well as a bulk process, and we're going to start with the guided method. Now, we suggest using this walkthrough for when you're adding a single user or just a few users, and you'll see why momentarily. Say, for example, I'm provisioning my own account. I have the ability to generate a random password. or I can type one in. And as we've talked about in kind of the the best practices in the deck before, you can require a password change upon next sign in, and even dole out that this user is a super administrator. Next step, I'll begin to put in some detailed contact information. We talked about the rich profile information that's so important to build out, so that you can kind of ensure collaboration across different parts of your organization. A nickname, title, manager, department, contact information, etc. All of that possible to populate here. There's a really handy tool within BetterCloud called the Time Saver, which allows you to pick an existing user on your environment. And I'll take my colleague Ben Howard. And I can use his profile as a template for the new one that I'm provisioning. So if I know that I'm adding this user to, say, an organizational unit that that has a user whose account is a good template, I can get that person's contact information, their organizational unit, and you can see the entire path here, and their groups as well. So that's kind of a shortcut if you want to quickly provision this profile, which I'm not going to do for now. On the next page, I pick out the org unit, as you can see from our structure here. So critical to do. Again, I can't stress this enough. If you take nothing else away from this discussion, please, please, please set up organizational units in your domain. Pick out their groups, and here you can do so in bulk. A major pain point of the admin console, and one of the great things that BetterCloud kind of provides value for is the ability to add users to multiple groups at the same time. And we'll be talking about this at length when we go into the bulk provisioning template, but here you have the ability to see, I can add this user to as many groups as I'd like all at the same time, rather than going group by group and making this a very, very time-consuming process. So save a lot of time with this workflow. Email signatures are next. I can insert dynamic contact fields, and as you can see, these map up to those rich profile data points that I mentioned before. So again, another reason that it's very, very critical to fill in that information. That information will flow through to a signature that you create with BetterCloud. To give you an example of what a signature might look like, this is an existing template that we have. Here you can see name, title, phone number, your logo. You can put in a company logo, a disclaimer statement, different colors and fonts. Feel free to dream big with the signature here. Subscriptions, I'm not going to worry about Apps Butler for the time being, but you can also share contact tags. These are contacts that are within your directory, so this user is able to see all the contact information that we've talked about for their colleagues when they log into Gmail or when they look at their contacts on the Gmail app on mobile devices. So the last thing I'll do is review and create this user. I haven't populated much information here, but just review to make sure that it's correct. I've got the signature template in place and all the subscriptions I want. Click Finish and Create User, and I'm all done. Now, the advantages to that completely streamlines the process of creating that user. Everything that I want involved in provisioning this account is here in one place, so I don't need to remember. It's not requiring me to recall to do a signature or put them into groups after I've created the user. It's all done kind of in a left to right process. And it saves a ton of time, as you can no doubt tell. The other side of user provisioning within BetterCloud is this bulk updating capability. Now, the way that this works is BetterCloud will have you export your users to a spreadsheet as the first step. That will take your entire directory, all of the people that are in your organization that have a Google Apps account, and it will put it into a spreadsheet that looks like this. This is just a sample of our organization. Yours might look a little bit different depending on how many users you have. But you can effectively manage thousands of users at the same time out of this template, which is what makes it an extremely powerful tool. If you're in an academic environment and you've got to provision new accounts maybe once a semester or once a school year, you're going to be doing so in large capacity when that time comes. And this is a great way that you can do all of those accounts at the same time without having to go CSV by CSV or user by user. So you'll save a ton of time when you're working on your summer projects. If you're working at a larger organization and you need to bulk suspend users, or you need to bulk create users, or bulk reset passwords for any reason. All of those things can be done here. So even past the provisioning process, there are so many ways that this template allows you to continue managing your user accounts on an ongoing basis. Now, as I mentioned, all of your existing users are exported when you export this template. So everything here I did not populate. It was populated for me. Each row represents one user, and each column represents one data point or setting on that user's account. Existing users are labeled in column A with a type of update. And if I hover over the column header, it gives me some instructions on how I can manipulate the cells below. So if I were to type new into column A, I could start provisioning new accounts. And as you can see here, I've already started to do that. I can manage everything on my users from this template. I can give them a new email address. I can put their name into my directory, give them a password or reset passwords from here, require a password change upon next sign-in, bulk suspend and restore accounts, hide and show users in my directory, add and remove them from groups in bulk. And this is now starting to look a lot like the provisioning workflow that we just saw a moment ago. The key piece here, organizational units, as I mentioned before, if you take nothing else away, please take this. As you may be aware, maybe not, Google doesn't really have a way that you can select an organizational unit as part of the provisioning process. So it's very, very important when using BetterCloud that you include this in your process for all the reasons we've kind of discussed, permissioning and not permissioning certain services within the Google Apps environment. Scrolling further to the right, you'll have all of the rich profile information we talked about before, a photo for your user, title, department, manager, phone numbers, addresses, emails, etc. So as you can tell, you really can complete the entire provisioning process on thousands of accounts right out of this template. When you're done making changes, if you've reviewed everything and you're ready to enact those changes, you simply come back into BetterCloud and using this drop-down menu, failed to retrieve my sheets. Not sure what the problem is there, but effectively it shows you the 25 most recent spreadsheets. You select your spreadsheet from the menu and click update users, and that's the entire process. So it turns a project that can take days into a project that takes minutes, something that's extremely effective when creating or managing all kinds of accounts. So that's the provisioning side. The other side of this process is offboarding or deprovisioning a user, and that's something that BetterCloud has thought a lot about. We talk to many customers who are concerned that if they delete an account, they'll lose all the data attached to that account: documents, calendars, group memberships, et cetera, et cetera. And the issue with that is they are continuing to pay for those accounts because they sit as suspended or they sit as inactive. In a Google Apps for Education environment, you may not have this as quite as much of a problem, but when transferring, when a staff member retires or moves on from your district, there's no doubt that information needs to go from their account to a replacements account. And there's really no good way to do that as part of an offboarding process. So there's all kinds of orphaned information just sitting on your Google Apps domain. Literally anyone who works with Google Apps can benefit from this process that we're about to go into. So I'll first select a user I want to deprovision, and I'll again pick my own account here. And that's going to bring up the best practices for deprovisioning a user. Now, I will just say at this point that every organization is, of course, different, and these are just suggested steps. You do not need to follow every one of these steps in order to deprovision and ultimately delete a user. These are just best practices from our conversations with customers. Some of the areas where we felt there was an opportunity for us to provide value. So please do understand that this is not to say that you need to accomplish all of these tasks in order to say that a user is fully deprovisioned if that doesn't fit the needs of your organization. So first, I can hide this user from the directory so that person isn't contacted by my other users. Then I can change the user's password. Some organizations may have security requirements that that need them to prevent that user from logging back into their account to access organizational data. This is a great way to set up a first roadblock for that. You can set up an auto reply so that any email that user receives doesn't go into a black hole. Maybe it says, so-and-so has moved on from the organization, please contact XYZ. You can also delegate access to that person's email so that a replacement, a manager, whomever it may be, can log into that person's account and pick up the slack while that person is leaving your organization. You can transfer over any documents this user owns so that they're not deleted. Sites and calendars. You can also transfer any groups that user owns or belongs to so that those distribution lists aren't lost or orphaned. You can create a custom checklist of activities unique to your organization that you need to accomplish. And as you can see here, we have some examples: retrieve a laptop, retrieve building access equipment, anything that's unique to your organization, maybe that occurs outside the world of Google Apps, I would recommend is a great way to utilize this checklist. Often it involves deprovisioning a user from other systems, say a Salesforce, for example, or an SIS in the case of the academic environment. These are great ways to kind of manage all of those tasks in one deprovisioning workflow. You can suspend the account and then use this wrap up as a progress tracker. So you can identify anything you've done with your custom tasks or the default tasks and anything you haven't done. And what that should suggest is that you can actually save your progress and come back later. So everything you've done will be preserved, but you don't have to do everything in one sitting. So there's no burden on you to remember to do everything all in one sitting, or when it simply occurs to you, you can offboard this user in a process that makes sense for you. Set up a calendar reminder to notify yourself to come back into BetterCloud and delete that user. Or when you're ready, click finish and confirm delete. And that's when this user's account will be gone. So it's good to make sure that you've transferred all the necessary items. So that concludes our discussion on provisioning and deprovisioning best practices. At this time, I'm going to turn it back over to Dylan to feed in some questions. If you have any questions direct for me that occur after our scheduled time today, feel free to email me, will@bettercloud.com. I'd be more than happy to assist in any way that I can.
Thanks, Will. Great presentation. Before we jump into questions, just wanted to say a few things. So for those of you that are interested in winning the Chromebook Pixel or one of these shirts and a lot of the other stuff we're giving away, I just made live the form in the Showcase app that you can fill out for this session. That'll also get you a copy of the slides from this presentation for those of you guys who want to review some of the stuff Will talked about. So just to dive into some of these questions, I saw a lot of good ones. So Tiago has a question for Will. Can I create a user or group on Google Admin Console and then sync it into BetterCloud?
Yes, the answer is yes, absolutely.
Hold on, Will, do you want to maybe close out of the presentation?
Oh, so sorry about that. Sure, let me bring my screen back here. Sorry about that.
No worries.
Great. So yes, Tiago, the answer is absolutely. You can do that. BetterCloud allows for syncing between the Google Apps admin console and our platform so that anything you create, whether it's a user, a group, an organizational unit, you can sync into BetterCloud. So if you start something in the admin console and you want to resume using it in BetterCloud, you'll have that ability.
All right, cool. So here's a question from Jeff. So I think the question is, are you able to assign a user to more than one OU? I think what you might be looking for is more interest in the Google groups. Maybe Will can talk a little bit about the difference of those two and what their functionalities are.
Sure. So Jeff, Dylan's absolutely right. There's a critical difference between groups and organizational units within the context of Google Apps. Groups, you can belong to multiple. And in my experience, the primary use case for groups is as email distribution lists. Sometimes you'll see forums or other kind of collaborative use cases for groups. Organizational units are very different from that. You can only belong to one organizational unit, whereas you can belong to multiple groups. And organizational units are primarily used for sectioning off parts of a business or an organization, and turning on and off different services within Google Apps. So what you may have seen in the admin console at some point is that certain services, it'll say on for some organizations in a little green bar right below the name of that service. And that's where you can actually turn on, say, YouTube or Google Drive for a particular OU or for particular OUs.
Definitely. And also, if you want to use them for the case of sharing a document with a specific org unit or group, you could definitely do that with groups, which I know is something that people sometimes think of using OUs for, but you could have someone, in a marketing group, in a finance group, and things like that. And you could share documents with those groups because they could be in multiple. All right, so the next question. Some of these are a little bit specific, but we have time, so we might as well jump into some of them. So, Will, when assigning rights to within an organization, is it better to start at the top with the most generic and work to more specific, i.e. the admins, or do you start with the high level access at the top and then get more general as you work down? What is your sort of technique?
That's a really good question. First of all, I would say, honestly, whatever you feel works for you, whatever is a system that you will understand and is logical, for the people that are actually going to be interacting with those OUs is best. In my experience, I would say the most common that I've seen are regional or departmental OUs that branch from the parent organization. So starting with the parent organization, someone will create say a New York OU or a Seattle OU or a Chicago OU, or OUs done by department if that's preferable. And I think that in most of the cases I've encountered, those OUs don't go too many levels. Sometimes they'll go, 2, maybe 3, but that can be kind of a confusing structure and it can be difficult to locate your users sometimes. So if you are going to go that route, I would say it's much more common in large organizations to go a very complex OU route, and just make sure that if you're doing it, it's because you absolutely need to and not just making things more complex on yourself.
Makes sense. So it's sort of a personal preference. So let's see, next question. So Renee is saying that she has several new employees that need to be added to different distribution lists each. So would a template option be created? Or would you recommend creating sort of a base user that you could use as the template within BetterCloud to sort of quickly get these people to have their different distribution lists set up?
The base user option is a great idea, Renee. So I would say that's a very, very creative and good thing to do. The template that I showed before, the spreadsheet with all of the users, is also a great way to go because you can pick your 7 or 8 users, your handful of users, and just drag and drop using native spreadsheet functionality all the distribution lists into the appropriate cells. So either one actually is really effective. I would say whatever positions you best for the long term. If you feel that you'll use a template or a template user or like a base user a lot, absolutely, that's a great way to go. If you don't think it's something you'll actually rely on, then use the template that I showed, the spreadsheet that I showed, as your way of setting up those group memberships.
Cool. Okay, let's see, another question. So I'm not too familiar with this other service. It seems to be something similar to what BetterCloud offers, but they were saying they currently use gPanel and they are not a big fan of it. And they're wondering what type of support BetterCloud offers and if there's any features that differentiate the two.
Sure. So, first, I should say I actually do know gPanel quite well. And I would say that BetterCloud offers a great deal of support to answer your first question. We have a live support desk that sits in our office here in New York. And they're the people that I ask when I have a question. So they're extremely valuable, extremely reliable. We also offer dedicated account consultants that we call customer success managers. So our customers have kind of their own personalized go-to or point of contact who helps with achieving goals within Google Apps with BetterCloud as a central focus. That's something we place a high value on. As far as key differences between the two products, one area that I can say is very different between the two is related to document security. BetterCloud has really emphasized document security. I can't speak for gPanel on this point, but we actually just released a few months ago regular expression searching and policies for Google Drive, allowing you to search for credit cards, allowing you to search for social security numbers or other personal data, custom searches, keywords, and your own defined regular expressions. At this time, to my knowledge, I don't believe gPanel has that capability. So that would be one key differentiator. If you have more questions or you would like to learn a little bit more of a side-by-side comparison, you can, of course, feel free to email me directly, and I'd be more than happy to focus on some of your pain points.
All right. So most of the rest of these are comments. They seem to be very kind comments about BetterCloud support and things like that. But if you guys have any more questions after, you guys could post them on the event page on Google+, or you guys could reach out to Will O'Leary directly on Google+. I'm sure he'd be happy to answer them. And just a note about tomorrow. So we have a few more sessions that I'm really excited about. So in the morning here, I'll put these up in the showcase application so you guys can see them. We have a session on optimizing your mobile workforce, so mobile device management and things like that, as well as how it can add security to your domain. And then we also have a session after that called Saving Time While Increasing Security in Google Apps, which should be a very interesting one, sort of about delegating roles and how you can save time by creating sort of semi-admins and things like that. And then after that, these are all the morning going into the afternoon now. How to build a robust unified communication suite with Google Apps. That's another session where you can win a Chromebook Pixel. So that's definitely one you want to tune in for, and it seems to be very interesting as well. So thank you, Will, so much for presenting. I think this is really helpful to everyone.
Dylan, just one other question. Is there not an opportunity for everyone who listened to today's session to get a free BetterCloud trial through the Showcase app?
Oh, yeah. Also in the Showcase app on the side there's a option for a free BetterCloud trial. So you guys can try that out for, I believe, 30 days. So you can try out all the things that Will showed you today and see how you like it. And you can obviously test out those support functions. Thanks again, Will. And if you guys have any questions, and remember to fill out that form if you want a copy of these slides and if you want to win that Chromebook Pixel. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye.